After every talk, I get the same question. Dr. D'Souza, we're convinced we shouldn't give our kids a smartphone. So what phone should we get them? This is the wrong question. The right question is whether they should have a phone at all. I'm Dr. Johann D'Souza, clinical psychologist, been speaking on saving kids from digital destruction for the past 8 years. Today, you're going to learn about whether your children should have a phone, and if you do think it's worthwhile, which phone is the best. Let's start by addressing the reasons why parents think their children should have a phone. And the first distinction to introduce here is the distinction between real needs and perceived needs. For example, probably the biggest objection that parents make is, what if there's an emergency? First question, is that a real emergency or just a perceived emergency? When was the last time your child had any emergency? And looking back on it, was it actually a real emergency? And what would have happened if they didn't have a phone? In most cases, almost every case, maybe even every case, absolutely nothing would have happened. There would have been no difference. It would have gotten figured out. And I'll give you a specific example. Knew a teen who didn't have a phone, driving down the highway, ran out of gas, pulled over. He's on the highway by himself, no phone. What does he do? Wow, this is an amazing emergency in 21st century America. This is exactly the reason why moms think their kids should have a smartphone, even though it leads to the destruction of their souls. Let me tell you what this kid actually did. He waited. The cop pulled over. What's the situation? Ran out of gas. No problem. Took him to the gas station. Got him a gallon of gas. Got enough to get to his home. Guess what? He's still alive today. And that kid is surviving, thriving today. And he learned a good life lesson, which is always check your gas tank before leaving your house. He also learned how to ask for help and how to solve your own problems, or at least get someone to help you in doing so. Good life lesson. Even if there is a real emergency, how about having your child memorize some phone numbers? Remember that? Remember the days when we used to memorize phone numbers? It's a good life skill. He only needs to know a couple. Yours, your spouse's, possibly one other's. And then he can exercise the life skill of asking an adult for help. Good thing about everyone being addicted to their phones is anywhere he turns, there's going to be a plethora of phones that he can borrow from. Next perceived need. They need it for navigation. Once they start driving, when they're 16, that's when they need a phone, because we all know that before 10 years ago, 15 years ago, kids would just drop dead when they turned 16 if they didn't have anywhere of navigating without a GPS. In fact, no, we used to all navigate without it using maps. Those things don't exist anymore. You're talking about real life physical maps. Remember when Google Maps first came out and you could make a custom map from starting anywhere, going anywhere, and print it off and take it with you? And that used to be considered really high tech at the time. I remember that very clearly. I was in high school at the time. Well, that's still something that children today can do. And that's an alternative to the phone. Actually, what would be even better is if they just learn directions, had a sense of direction, learn how to get from point A to point B. They're probably not driving all around the city. It's probably, most of their driving is probably restricted to very specific, frequently visited places. And isn't it a better gift to give them the gift of the sense of direction and learning how to navigate themselves? And that's going to repay them well into adulthood. Even if they do end up using a GPS later in adulthood, they will still have those skills. And we know that navigating, it helps our memory and helps our brain development. There's a study of cab drivers in London, which showed that their hippocampus was larger after having done this intense course of memorization. So there are benefits to it. Now, if you really think they need a GPS, or if they would be convenient to have a GPS, you can just buy a GPS. You can buy a $50 Garmin. So a big principle here, whatever functions the smartphone has, let's break those down into its component features and see if there's another non-addictive device that can fulfill those functions, like a Garmin to fulfill the GPS function. And that being said, some of the feature phones that I'm going to talk about and explain later on, actually all of them, you do include the maps feature. So that it is possible to get a phone that has the maps feature, but doesn't have the other addictive elements, which we'll talk about later. The third perceived need is having a camera. Are you going on a special school trip? You want them to have a camera to keep memories. So let's give them a smartphone, right? Well, think about the alternatives here. First, isn't it better just to be in the present moment, enjoying the experience, enjoying what you're seeing, taking in what you're seeing? I would say that's the first lesson to convey to a child and to anyone in this culture where you go to a world-class museum. And what I've seen, I went to the Borghese Gallery in Rome, a beautiful museum, one of my favorite small museums in the world. People walk by each piece of art hold up their camera, take a picture of it, and then walk away without even looking at the work of art, contemplating it, enjoying it. It's a priceless artifact. So first of all, teaching children to really contemplate and meditate on what they're seeing without using the medium of a camera. Now, second of all, let's say you do think it's very helpful for them to have a camera, just have a digital camera. Again, separate device, serves the function, not addicted. It is important for parents to recognize the danger of having a camera on the phone. I've talked to a couple different school administrators who live in different cities, and they both said independently that when children get in serious trouble outside of school, most of the time, 80% of the time, it's due to two things: group texts and sending and receiving photographs. There is a big danger to having a camera on a smartphone. It's not just as simple as keeping precious memories for the future. We know that 30% of 9 to 12-year-olds have received nude pictures, not to mention sending them, so that it's important to watch out for that danger. Fourth objection, they need a phone to text. When thinking about texting, I want you to call to mind the world before smartphones, but after cell phones. There's this gap. When we had cell phones, didn't have smartphones yet, people were texting a lot. TV shows were making fun of people for being addicted to texting. People were addicted to texting, some of us still are. The problem is now that there are so many more addictive things that texting seems so innocuous and harmless in comparison. But it is not healthy for the human brain, especially for a child who doesn't have self-control, who doesn't have a complete judgment center, to have the sense that at any moment he can give or receive a message. He can send or receive a message. That means part of our brain is going to be on that, especially if that device is on the person's body at all times or by your head, even when you're sleeping. Actually, it affects the sleep quality. There's a study that shows that it is not healthy for a child to have unlimited text access. What I see as the appropriate use of texting for a child is to be able to arrange in-person hangouts. So the purpose of a text is to say, hey, we're meeting at Jimmy's house on Friday at 7. Can you be there? And for that, you only need 5 minutes of texting a day. So if a child doesn't have text, which I think that is a legitimate use of texting at a certain age. So if you decide that your child is ready for that, you just limit the texting to 5 minutes a day and physically limit the phone so it doesn't even allow more than that. Of course, at this point, we need to address group texting, which takes everyone to the lowest common denominator. It's a massive distraction. Phone is being lit up with notifications. And when children are in group text, it becomes extremely crude, extremely crass, oftentimes perverse, oftentimes sending corrupted photos to each other and using a very, very crude language. If you don't believe me, just read your child's group text message chain. So the immediate alternative parents come up with is flip phone. Hey, let's just give them a flip phone and protect them from all the world's evils. Here's the problem with a flip phone. Many flip phones are actually smartphones in disguise, meaning they have browser access. They have a browser. And at the same time, they don't have the restrictions that a smartphone would have. This makes flip phones actually more dangerous than smartphones in some cases. Not funny enough. Yeah, I did know a young man who was addicted to pornography on his flip phone for precisely this reason. So this brings us to the other category of phones, which we call feature phones. Feature phones are phones designed to provide specific features and to intentionally not provide other features. So these phones are designed to help children or to help adults to not get addicted. So let's talk through now the 4 big players in the feature phone industry. And this is going to be Gabb, Troomi, Bark, and Pinwheel. Let's take each of those in turn. Let's start with Gabb. Upside, radically simple, no browser, no social media. It looks like a smartphone, but it's not. So it makes things really easy for parents. You can block group texting and music. You can't block the camera, and it does have maps capability. The phone costs $150, and you have to also pay $30 a month for the service. It doesn't go through your own carrier. You have to go through the Gabb service. Gabb is for parents who want a simple phone with minimal features to manage that also looks like a smartphone. Next, we have Troomi. The idea behind Troomi is that the phone so-called grows with your child, meaning that they have 3 different plans that you can enroll in depending on your child's level of maturity, and each plan gives them access to more and more features on the phone. The most basic plan is calls and text only, so that keeps things very simple. And again, you can block group text and you can block music. You can't block the camera, and the phone does provide maps capability. The important thing with Troomi is to pick the right plan and make sure that your child doesn't have access to unnecessary things that would be harmful to him. In terms of cost, the phone itself is a Samsung, which they give you for free, and you just pay the monthly fee, depending on which plan you have. It can be anywhere between 15 and $30 a month. The third phone is Pinwheel. Advantages are it works with any carrier, and they're therefore offering the most customization out of all the feature phones we're talking about. So they have an app library of 300 apps, and you can pick and choose which ones you want for your child. You can block the browser, group texting, music. You can't block the camera, and it does have maps capability. Pinwheel allows you to program different modes for the phone so that different apps are available at different times of the day. You can have a school mode, you can have a weekend mode, you can have an after school mode. So that controls what they have access to at any given time. In terms of cost, you're going to pay a couple $100 for the phone, plus $15 a month to Pinwheel, but that's going to be in addition to your own carrier service fee. So Pinwheel is for parents who want a lot of different options and customizability. Keep in mind that this also introduces a greater headache to parents because there's more to manage, and probably there's going to be more arguing, bantering, negotiating on the part of the child to get you to give permission to apps that maybe you don't want to. Finally, we have Bark. What makes Bark unique is their monitoring service. So they monitor the text, the pictures, the websites, etc. And then they notify you if they see anything that's suspicious or flagged. Bark can also block group texting and music. It's the only one that can also block the camera, and it does have maps capability. Bark has two different plans. The most basic plan is talk and text only, no internet at all. So that makes it very simple. It's going to be similar to Gabb in that regard. And then the advanced plan gives you access to different apps, which you can pick and choose. And again, they provide you notifications if they see something suspicious. Personally, I'm not a big fan of reporting to the parent if there's suspicious activity. I think that if you are concerned that your child might be exposed to something gravely harmful, then they just shouldn't have that device to begin with. So I would recommend just sticking with the starter plan myself, but it can be helpful, especially if you have much older kids, to have that customizability. Regarding cost, it's $10 a month for the device and $30 a month for the service. Now, if you want the most basic, simple option, you can get the Nokia 110 4G. It costs $40, super simple. It has calls and texts only, or it can be just calls. It has no Wi-Fi capability. You can lock down also the mobile data, and also you can lock down the camera. So this is going to be the simplest, most headache-free option if you just want calls or just calls and texts. So what phone should you get your child? First thing, no child needs a phone. It's very convenient. That's why we have them, but it's not necessary. They can live without it. And there's also other devices that can provide the services that a phone does without the drawbacks that the phone has. And if you do think that the benefits outweigh the harms, which is the way that you want to look at this, not whether the phone has any benefit, but do the benefits outweigh the harms? If the answer to that question is yes, you can look into one of the featured phones that we talked about today. If you're not sure whether your child is mature enough to handle one of these things, you can look at their maturity in other areas of their life. Do they get themselves up on time? Do they make their bed every day? Do they do their schoolwork without being asked? Pack their bag, make their lunch without being reminded? What does the state of their room look like? Their backpack, the locker, is it clean? Is it well ordered? Do they manage their own schedule? Do they take care not only of themselves, but of their siblings and the rest of the family? Do they do their chores without being asked? If they can't manage these things, then introducing a smartphone or even a feature phone that has certain smartphone apps capabilities is just going to make their struggle for virtue much harder, not easier. The number one feature to look out for in a phone is, does it have browser access, and can that browser be locked down, blocked completely, not accessed at all? No back doors. That's what some of the feature phones offer. I've mentored boys for 15 years. What I've seen is the most capable, happiest, mature young men either have very minimal phone features or they don't have phones at all. I don't think that's a coincidence. If you're wondering what makes smartphones so toxic, check out my free guide, The 4 Critical Moments That Most Parents Miss. It'll be here below. If you want me to speak to your community, your school, your church, reach out to me. I love doing it. I'm Dr. Johann D'Souza, clinical psychologist. I'll see you in the next video.